Okay, it's been a rough week, but for better or worse, I'm still alive and the survey is going well. Not only has it provided some useful feedback and shown my wonderful audience to be the epitome of class, but it has led me to take a closer look at the past episodes, and it really does show in a few places that they were mostly written the night before shooting, allowing very little time for proofreading, additional research, or revisions, but plenty of room for errors. So I realize I've got some explanations and apologies to give out, and we will start with my introductory video.
And I won't explain or say I'm sorry.
But remember, I'm just a man. I'm not a hero. Now I know this is a bad look, but when I make a mistake or otherwise say something that turns out to be untrue, I've got to come out and set the record straight and make sure you have all the most accurate and up-to-date information. It's a little thing called journalistic integrity. And so I'm going to be doing one of these every once in a while. Now, in our first full-length episode, Playing Doctor, I opened by talking about the background of the show. Initially, I stated that it had run for over 26 seasons and was later informed that the original show ran for the 26 seasons, and that when it came back in 2005, they started calling them serieses, I think that's grammatically correct, so that there was a distinction between the old and the new, of which there are currently 10. So I was technically correct that there were over 26 seasons, but just felt the need to clarify that. I also went on to say that Jodie Whittaker would be the first to trade in the Doctor's shoes for a pair of high heels, but it turns out I was wrong. Plenty of past Doctors have worn drag for one reason or another. And now this next error is unconfirmed, but when I criticized the studio for making every Doctor the same species, I included the silence in an offhand list of things the Doctor could have been. What's special about this creature is that as soon as you stop looking at it, it erases itself from your memory and you have no recollection of its existence. So there is a chance that they could have had a silent Doctor in a series that nobody remembers because of it. Furthermore, the silence is a species that erases itself from one's memory when it leaves your field of view. Therefore, when I rattled off that list of creatures that the Doctor hasn't been, the silence might not have actually qualified, as there's a chance that there could have been a silent Doctor and nobody remembers the series. Now, as for the silence being on the list of creatures that haven't portrayed the Doctor... Alright, hang on, we've fallen a minute behind, and I have no idea how that happened. Actually, yeah, I think I know what's going on here. Just keep that silence graphic up until we're done talking about Doctor Who. Like squash it into a corner or something. Just as well we screwed up this part because nobody's going to remember it. Now, another point that had been made to me is that none of the Doctors on the show have been played by an actual Doctor. I mean, talk about representation. Oh, and none of the aliens were played by extraterrestrial life forms either. So tell me again how this show is progressive. Moving on to Gorilla Gate Exposed. This was originally intended to be a one-off before I found out just how deep the rabbit hole really went. Now, early on, I stated that Harambe's grandmother, Josephine, was euthanized on the 9th of January this year. I don't actually recall where I got that date from, and after double-checking with the Miami Zoo's website, it took place on the 18th of January. I think that's the only correction I need to make for this one. All other errors and loose ends have been addressed in parts 2 to 4. Except the 3rd of May 2009, and I will get back to you as soon as I find out what happened on that day. Now, don't forget to Pokemon Go to the polls and commit some plebiscide. Yeah, that episode's fine. Ghostbusters. Now, I didn't talk a lot about the actual movie, partly because as I was writing my review, Red Letter Media decided to put out one that's an hour long. Dates were too close together, and I didn't want to seem like a copycat, so I just focused on the parts they didn't address. Now, about that Michael Hat joke that was so bad I had to write my own version. I can't actually put it down to bad writing because it turns out that joke was improvised. In fact, a lot of the dialogue was improvised. In fact, they had takes that went up to 40 minutes and cut out the good parts. I mean, that is an interesting approach to filmmaking, but it results in a lot of jokes with no setup or payoff. And this is just me, but if I were directing something like this, that's how I would have done the rehearsals, and I would have had the writer sit down with a notepad to take down what worked, what didn't, and send him off with a copy of the footage to make what he can out of the material the actors provided. I also acknowledge that they didn't hire Chris Hemsworth's character because of his looks. They hired him because he was the only one who responded to their job ad. But immediately after they've hired him, the fourth Ghostbuster shows up and inserts herself into the team. So what reason do they have for keeping him around other than for eye candy? I mean, it's demonstrated many times over that he doesn't even do the job they supposedly hired him for. Now to our Father's Day video, where I may or may not have advocated for revenge. I stand by what I said. I mean, a very important thing is to know when it is appropriate. And it's different for everyone and every situation. But my advice is to treat it as a means to an end. To end something, alright? End being the operative word. Because if it's going to provoke further reprisals, then there is no need to perpetuate a vicious cycle that nobody's going to come out on top of. I mean, you need to know when to turn the other cheek as well. And once again, revenge doesn't have to be violent. Now, at the end of my analysis of Feel Good Inc., I read out the rest of the song titles from the Demon Days album, and have since come to question my initial interpretations. Track 3, Kids with Guns, could just as easily allude to the rise in shootings. And when I first looked at track 5, Dirty Harry, I initially thought about Clint Eastwood, the American hero who talks to chairs. But as we saw in Kids in America, the American spirit is alive and well, for better or worse. So the song Dirty Harry probably has more to do with the character of a cop who doesn't follow the rules and the police state. And I completely missed the track titled White Light, which could allude to the blinding flash of nuclear explosions. Once again, these interpretations are from song titles alone. More research is still required. And that is half of our episodes covered, and I think I might need to leave it here for now. Because so far in the survey, there's an equal portion of my audience saying that the average episode is too long, as there are those who like them long, and I'm still analyzing and figuring out what to do with the information coming in. Another alternative factor to ending the show here is that the next item to discuss would be Kids in America, and that was a very dense episode with a lot to unpack. There are many themes running through it, some of which might even require their own individual episodes. So this has been my first set of retractions, and while I regret to say that there are more inbound, they will not interfere with next week's episode, Gorilla Gate Part 5, The Bantu Blunder. And in the meantime, don't forget to fill out our survey if you haven't already. I'm Connor O'Loughlin, and you're watching and potentially listening to Alternative Factors. Until next time, stay woke, people. Right, hang on, we missed that part about the silence, didn't we? Oh, crap. Okay, one last thing before you guys go anywhere. Let's go back to Doctor Who for a moment. Now, the Silence is an alien race that is able to erase itself from your